Hello and welcome. And today's video is about why events are hard. And funny enough, it's nothing to do with the t-shirt I'm wearing. I'm just wearing this because I'm actually going out soon. I should point out I'm going out to play badminton. I know, crazy, right? I'm awful at it. Right, why events are hard. So, let me talk about this in kind of some broad terms, right? What I'm talking about here is why people, or some people, kind of get higher expectations and sometimes don't understand what actually goes into an event. Now, I've done a few events. I've been both sides of the camera. I've run my own events. I've done all this kind of stuff, right? So, here's the main issue people have, is making a stream from home fairly easy. Doing it from an event, so easy in fact that people wonder why, when you run a simple stream at an event, why does it look so bad? Or why is it not so much better? Or why is it not even at least what I can do here? The reason for this, the very basic reason, is because every little increment you get better takes a whole lot more. The amount of stuff you have to put into an event to make it look better is exponential. And basically that just means, like, if you want 2 microphones, well, then you probably need a mixing desk. And then you need someone to keep an eye on that mixing desk and make sure everything works well and it all feeds back correctly. And that depends on, that's more wires then, and that's more equipment. And someone has to look at that, right? So already a little thing. If you want to put a decent camera on, then maybe you need a different connection. Maybe you need another bit of kit to kind of run into what you're running at. You're running at, 1080p, 60 frames a second. Well, you've got to make sure you can kind of cope with that. As a PC, cope with that. What about your background? What about your lights? Like, lighting is very important. A lot of people don't get that. A lot of these smaller lands don't get it, and you'll see the more professional ones is down to really good lighting. Even things like makeup, right? And don't get me wrong, I thought it was just awful when I first started. I was like, I don't want to put makeup on. This is weird. This is so weird. Until I realised, like, you can tell when people you can't tell when people are wearing makeup. You can tell they look good. And that makes your stream look better. If you got, because everyone will have a shine under proper lights. Who don't care who you are, unless you're some sort of reptile. You're gonna look a little bit shiny because of how the lights work. With me, I look a lot shiny. I look like I've been wiping my head on chips all day. That's fries for you Americans. So all this sort of stuff adds up. And that's not even talking about how many people you need to run it. From a simple stream taking just one producer and kind of trying to feed stuff in to, whole desks and hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of equipment. And they don't do that for fun. They don't go, you know what we need? A desk 17 foot wide. Why? Buttons. They do it because that's what it takes. And I know some professional guys. It's very difficult at that level. Especially, like, it's not so much in-game. Once they get in-game, it's fine. They've got to do little updates. But when they're doing these transitions and many cameras, it's a lot more difficult. So this is kind of why some people kind of get frustrated at events sometimes. Now, bearing in mind that a lot of event companies seem to run on a good, healthy level of volunteers, which is fine, right? At the moment in esports there is this volunteer level. We'll talk about that some other time. For me, it's you don't understand, like, when you got set up, especially like, oh, why don't you just take an extra day and an event to set up and test things? Well, because that might be another 10 grand. And depending on the budget and your margin for the event, you might not have 10 grand to kind of blow on that. And that's where sometimes it gets a little bit tricky. If you have issues setting up, something could go wrong. Cables got to get laid. And when you're laying out that much stuff and you've got that many people, it's very difficult to make sure everything goes right every single time. You do as much testing as possible. But bearing in mind, some of these events can have thousands of feet of cables and hundreds of connections. Like, no wonder things occasionally goes wrong, and people sometimes need to be a little bit more patient. Now, don't get me wrong. There are events out there, and there are ways you can get around these things, and I think when I get frustrated about stuff, or when people who've done events get frustrated about stuff, or take the mick out of other events, it's more because they know that a kind of a step's been skipped, or they've done something wrong. Sometimes it's completely out of the organiser's hands. Sometimes it's completely out of production's hands. Sometimes there's nothing you can do. If there's an internet outage, or power goes down, or someone's cut through a wire, there's nothing you can do about it. If an Xbox goes down, there's nothing you can do about it. If a PC breaks, there's nothing you can do about it. You can only fix it as quick as you can. So when there's been, delays before of 40 minutes and people are like, oh, this is ridiculous, how unprofessional, can't run anything right, this is terrible, they're shit, all these horrific things that people come out with straight away. And I'm sitting there going, that is, sometimes, honestly, I don't know how events ever get done. because something is probably going to go wrong at some point. Someone's going to go missing. Someone might be ill. I've seen players in there with sick buckets in the booths. All kinds of stuff, right? And this is just for production. This is not even... We're not even talking about, the consoles the player using. We're not even talking about all the spectators, all the fans, or maybe the open part of the land. Maybe you've got people exhibiting and they need power, or they need internet, or they need lights, or they need something. And then you've got people ticketing the front, and all this kind of comes in. And maybe you've got to appease the venue, and maybe you've got to do all this kind of stuff, like a huge checklist to accomplish in 3 days, or 1 day setting up, and even then you don't get to see anybody. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should just let everything slide. There's no way we should let everything slide. We should always demand more. But we should demand it with realistic expectations. Well, I think that's why, I've been at events and people are moaning about it, and I'm sitting there and I'm holding my tongue, because I'm like, you don't understand what is actually happening. If something is going wrong, even if stuff is not being said from the company, and occasionally it is being fixed as fast as humanly possible. Whether a whole system's being taken out and another one plugged back in and then tested and then logged into and then signed on, and then people are now getting their warm-up started. And you're like, well, now these guys need to have a warm-up. Or maybe a player's being difficult. I mean, some of the delays at events are just player-based. I mean, Jesus Christ, some of these players really love to just kind of hammer home and like, well, I need a good 15-minute warm-up. Where have you been? I've been to the toilet. Doesn't matter though, you told me to go. Oh, I haven't got scuff. Or I've forgotten a peripheral. I don't know what my login is. Are you a professional player, or do you need a slap? And that's just small things that could go wrong. Like, there is an awful lot in an event that can go wrong, and there's an awful lot of money that gets poured into these things. And I said, there's a lot that goes into, like I said, once you start adding an analyst desk and extra microphones and extra cameras, and maybe you want to throw to an interviewer, and maybe you want to do X, Y, and Z, you're looking at a very, very complicated setup. And that's not even including putting in live graphics or animated graphics or cool videos, or making sure the sound's done, because as a sound guy, now I've got to make sure both mics are off. He's got to do that every single time, sometimes for 15 hours a day, when he may have been up late the night before, kind of working hard and testing everything. Some of these people in production really are the unsung heroes of events. Not the people in front of the camera, not even the players some of the times. Just the guy who's sitting there behind the screen for 15 hours a day on very little sleep, putting in the work. And because trust me, if he does his job well, people say, oh, congrats to production. Yeah, it was a really good event. But if he does something wrong, or misses a button, or misses a beat, people know. People know every single time. And maybe do everything right 100 times during that weekend. But the first time you do it wrong, people will notice. People will notice. And I think that's what's so hard about some of these events. That's why sometimes it looks really hard, and people are like, oh, they're so incompetent. They don't know what they're doing. And I'm like, trust me, they're trying. And sometimes as casters, we get to see it. I've been to, I think I've worked with all the major ones, every major company, and I see what goes on behind the desks, and see how kind of crazy it all comes together. And I think, realistically, some of these people do a fantastic job. So many people I've worked with in the industry are fantastic. And don't get me wrong, there are people who are awful at their jobs. And there are, companies that generally do the wrong thing when it comes to events. But everybody learns, everyone makes mistakes. Some people like one way that a company does something, some people don't. So people are like, oh, why can't you just put that little feature in? Put that little feature in. Well, that little feature actually takes a little bit to set up. It doesn't work with our setup quite well, because we need it to go from this to this to this. And that's maybe not a showrunner. Maybe we can't switch it on the bloody fly. Especially if it's been planned out for a week. But, I said, this is just me kind of ranting. Like I said, this is something I feel very strongly about, and I kind of want to talk to you and kind of make you guys explain how much of a step out it actually is to get these things. Like, from doing everything up in a little bit of quality can cost a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of people. I don't mean cost a lot of people. They're not going to sacrifice them, although sometimes I think they would help. But I mean, it can be kind of, it might go, oh, we've gone up this much, but it's actually cost us this much, because we've had to buy a 30 grand rig just to kind of have it as our mixing desk. Or we've had to buy 4 or 5 new several £1,000 cameras, because that's what it takes to kind of step up to that level. And we've had to bring in some new staff. And we've had bigger and better. And it takes lots and lots. And don't get me wrong, once you get up to another level and keep going up, obviously you want to improve every event. So it's kind of like a never-ending circle. But never mind. I thought I'd just kind of throw this in there, and if this has even impacted you on you a little bit, or you kind of understand, or you want to talk about it a little bit more, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think. You know, have you had experience with this? Do you run LANs? Have you been behind the camera? Have you seen how hard it is? Let me know. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I kind of really appreciate every time that people actually watch these videos and really like what I'm talking about. If you've got topics, by the way, or at least ideas for videos, put them in the comments. I'll give you my thoughts on them. If I can do them, I will. I try to put a lot of thought into these videos, and kind of just come at them, and I think about them for a few days to make sure I've kind of got my head right around them and addressing the key issues. But yeah, thank you all so much. Hit the comment, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. And until then, I'll see you next time.